I invoke our mothers, our grandmothers, and our fem ancestries. I invoke the teachers, healers, mentors, caregivers, and warrior women of history. I invoke the femmes of all genders, bloods, ages, lineages, generations of witches and fighters who infuse the universe with love, rage, and magic. I invoke the dynasties of femmes who gouged the earth with their bare hands and planted seeds from the roots of their hunger. The bloodlines of women and femmes whose bodies are steep with the darkness of the Kala Pani, whose spirits are awash with the cleansing light of the full moon. I invoke my great-grandmothers and all those women whose unknowing bodies stormed on a ship from the continent to the island, hands tied, bodies battered, minds resilient. I honor the women and femmes who never made it to the shores, those deities who had to die, their copper flesh an offering to the creatures that live along the edge of the unknown, where ocean becomes sky and sky becomes ocean. I invoke the women and femmes who suffered, who died, who lived, who fought, who resisted patriarchy and colonialism on sugarcane plantations. I honor my mother, Vimala Devi, teacher, mentor, nurse, caregiver, inspiration, and embodiment of femme power. I honor her mother, Dana Pakion, whose fortitude knew no bounds, whose story remains untold, repressed, forgotten, chained to the silence of history. I honor Rita, whose womb carried ships of born and unborn children, brave mother who offered her milk and blood to quench the inconsolable longing of the aching land. I honor Kathelho, woman of rose water, saffron, betel leaves, and nuts, whose rugged feet walked on earth, sand, basalt, and burning cores. I honor Kamla, whose ceremonious fingers enchant the dead and bring their spirits back to life. Uma, whose visions speak in femme tongues long forgotten. Lalita, whose sword flows like rivers longing for a sea to call home. Asha, whose ancestral lungs quiver curses like the crackle of burning sandalwood. Devika, whose grief is cavernous like a dark, dark night that never ends. And I invoke strength and wisdom from Goddess Kalima, Redeemer of the universe, Goddess of time, change, and destruction, Goddess with blooded eyes and a black tongue, who cuts patriarchy and wears it as an accessory around her neck, who steps on misogyny and crushes it with the strength of her foot. That lineage, past, present, and future, the women and femmes who push the universe to always be greater than itself, better than itself, I invoke and I honor. When I tell my mother that I am trans, her lips wobble a minor tremor, but her silence does not span the 3 decades of my life. She smiles with compassion. She speaks her golden heart, soft, warm, welcoming. Her eyes cast a resilient glow. She does not need to tell me. She does not need to tell me about our history because our lineage is one of silence. Our lineage is one of silence that we weave in between our intimacies. But her body, her brown, exhausted body speaks of her childhood. I see in her old eyes the grimy streets of Portress, grey, dusty, and stifling under the burning sun. I see in the drooping ridges around her cheeks the cold embrace of banyan trees when the summer heat became too heavy to bear. I see in the shakiness of her lips melted tar gluing itself to her 8-year-old feet. In the streets of the capital, poverty was a sticky business. Particles of blackness stained the virtuous skin of childhood. I see in my mother's shiny forehead, in those beads of sweat that placed themselves evenly on her skin, child pushing a cart. Unde putu adur soso. Unde putu adur soso. Those sweets that her godmother made diligently with freshly crushed coconut and dried rice, and that she pushed in a cart every single day of her life, all the way from Plainvert to Cité Sainte-Croix. Unde putu adur soso. Unde putu adur soso. When I look deep into the battered trenches under my mother's eyes, I see copper coins shifting hands, churchgoers, beggars, children, sex workers, faithful and unfaithful, unwrapping sweet round coconut brown rice cakes from the humidity of newspapers that they dip into hot black tea, an everyday ritual of my mother's childhood in Cité Sainte-Croix. When I tell my mother that I am trans, her withered hands shake like dried twigs forgotten by history, but her silence does not span the 3 decades of my life. She tells me, "Papa c'est toi kama, tu connais du monde comme toi, tout le temps tiens à ça." She tells me that we come from a history and a culture where the man, woman, and the women, man have always existed. That people like me are present in our myths and our religions, and that for as long as she can remember, Viejimun, the elders, they spoke of the man, women, and the women, man. Her eyes mirror phantom images, lucid narratives line her haunted lips. She whispers into the soles of my feet that she vaguely remembers an old relative of hers when she was a child who was, in her words, of my kind. But she immediately closes her heart, fetters her lung, stitches her throat with a filament of concealment. She threads the unspoken between our bodies because our lineage is one of silence that we weave in between our intimacies. But every day since I dream of my mother's childhood, and I dream of this relative who was of my kind. Sometimes I call him Tajani. Sometimes I call him Devakumo. Sometimes I call her Devika. But most of the times I call her Lalita. I dream of Lalita with round shoulders, a blood-red bindi on her forehead, a glint of gold that hangs over the edge of her pointed nose, raven curly hair, a touch too greasy, but that still bounces up and down the nape of her neck as she walks in the morning sun. Lalita wears plain cotton kurtas that she bargains in the markets of Plainvert. And if she ever gets invited to a wedding, she adorns herself of her most prized garment, a brocaded red salwar kameez that wraps her rotten body like the skin of syrupy lychee. Lalita eats rice, dal, and pickles during the week, And on weekends, she treats herself to some dried salted fish cooked with fresh thyme, onions, and tomatoes. And bon chougai poisson salé, bien morsé. Lalita has a radio set. She listens to the news and Avis de Décès every morning and Hindi songs every evening. Lalita rubs coconut in her jet black hair every Sunday. Lalita has a job. She works in the tobacco factory with all the poor women from the capital whose husbands had died in obscure wars that nobody on the island really knows about. They were fighting a war for the British and never came back. During her lunch break, Lalita does not step out with the other women to roll tobacco in small newspaper pieces that burn their darkened lips. Instead, she stays at her workstation and she prays, she prays, she prays. She prays to Goddess Durga Ma. She prays for protection. She prays for safety. She prays for love. She prays for a long life. She prays, she prays, she prays for forgiveness. On Sundays, Lalita polishes her floors with a brosse coco. She brings out her mattress, she leans it against the mango tree in the sun and beats it with a stick. She winnows her rice and her lentils for the week. She makes fruit pickles that she dries on the roof of her house, and at the end of the day, she massages her feet with a warm slick of coconut oil. Lalita likes flower patterns. Lalita loves embroidery. Lalita has a lover. But does Lalita have a lover? I'm not sure yet whether Lalita has a lover. But this is Lalita, and I dream about her every day. She draws her life like a moving sculpture, a figure ephemeral, becoming and unbecoming herself with every single one of my dreams. When I tell my mother that I am trans, she does not tell me about Persiani, Devakuma, or Devika. She does not even tell me about Lalita. Instead, my mother tells me that she is an uneducated woman, but that she feels much pride that I went to school, that I can read and write, that I can speak English and I speak French. She tells me that because of her lack of education, she does not have the words for it. But she understands that people like me have always existed. She calls me Zomfam, which in our local language means man-woman. Zomfam, Zomfam, Zomfam. I take pleasure in being a Zomfam. A man-woman being neither Zum nor femme, yet being both Zum and femme, navigating a middle passage between being and becoming, an interstice where migrant bodies like mine find their truth, an undefinable space that maps the cartography of my skin, a hyphen that holds and wraps my gender experience. But my mother then tells me that I shouldn't call myself a Zomfam. That she is an uneducated woman, and she does not know those things, but that she's happy, that I have an education, that I can call myself trans, that I have the words, the language to describe the mystification of my gender, the longing to tear off my skin, and along with my skin, my birth certificate, my passport, and all the other state-sanctioned papers that sanction my gender. Deep inside me, there is a voice There is a voice that speaks in the uneducated tones of my mother, and this voice embroidered itself from pore to pore onto the surface of my skin. There is a voice that does not have the words or the vocabulary, but that reverberates goodness and music in my body, my heart beating the drum of my ancestors. There is a voice that did not go to school, that does not speak English, does not speak French, and yet echoes wisdom and truth in my bloodstream, like the waves of the oceans, the ones that witness the loss of our languages. And that voice speaks, and that voice speaks. And that voice speaks and tells me that I do not need an imperial language to define myself, that I do not need to be trans in English or in French, that colonialism has already wrapped itself like a knot around our vocal cords, and even though our lineage is one of silence that we weave in between our intimacies, this voice exists deep within and it speaks like my mother, like my grandmother, like my great-grandmother, like my great-great-grandmother, like those generations of women and femmes who fought to keep our language alive and pass it on from generation to generation. So mother, I will listen. I will listen to the voices of our ancestry, those that dictate that I speak out loud. And when I'm done tearing off my skin and my birth certificate and my passport and all the other state-sanctioned papers that dictate my gender, I will take every single piece of torn skin and paper. I will stick them back together with gold and melted diamonds as I so desire. And I will build an armor, a fierce femme armor that I will celebrate, an unbreakable, unshakable object of love that I will hold together with respect and dignity. And I will call this armor Femme. When I tell my mother that I am trans, her lips wobble a minor tremor, but her silence does not span the few decades of my life. She does not need to tell me. She does not need to tell me, because ours is a secret language. Ours is the long, long lost secret language that we weave in between our intimacies.
City TV everywhere.
Warning. The following program depicts exercises which, depending upon your physical condition, may be hazardous to your health. You are therefore warned not to attempt any of these exercises without consulting your doctor. Even with such approval, each exercise should be done in moderation and should not be performed if tired or to the point of fatigue or pain. Do not overexert yourself.
Hi there! I want you to take a big breath for me. Lots of good revitalizing oxygen. And take another one, let it stretch it out. That's good. We're going to do some jazzercise that'll keep you fit and smiling, sure. Ready? 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 Yeah! Now find that beat. There it is. Front, back, front, back, front, back, front, back. That's good. That's good. Ho! Now step. Release, contract, release, contract, release. There you go. Smile, smile, smile. Down to the pelvis. Front, back, front, back. Push and pull, push and pull. Yeah! There you go. And do it again. Smile, smile, smile. And do it again. Smile.
You're not. Perfect. You.
Plie, hand stretch. Plie, hand stretch. Plie, hand.
Hi, in case you haven't met me yet, my name is Danny. Let's start with standard straight warm-up. Wrist warm-up. Start with boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom. Now get it to the right.